Jeffrey Epstein Part 2.
Part 2. Hello and welcome back to Sorcery and Sillage.
Or Sillage and Sorcery.
Sillage and Sorcery. I say it wrong every time. And there is a little icon in the top right corner when we record. But you know what? Dyslexia never sleeps. So
Uh-oh. ADHD never quits, so.
ADHD never quits. So if you are just joining us, this is a two-parter. Welcome to Sillage and Sorcery, a podcast about perfume from the perspective of two witches who infuse their craft with the art of perfumery. I'm one of your hosts, B. Sampson from Venus Invictus, and I'm here with my co-host,
Melissa Sifjardóttir of Sif Sniffs.
And if you'd like to support us, the best way you could do so is by buying our products, which are linked in the show notes below. Real quick, before we get into it, I want to kind of just lightly brush on the tea with Fragrantica.
Yes, we actually have Perfume World tea.
Perfume World tea. So I was minding my own business. I don't really use Fragrantica. It's helpful sometimes, but more than anything, because I am a perfumer, I use base notes. I was not really a Fragrantica person, but I saw that someone else posted that when Charlie Kirk died, they had their banner changed to Rest in Peace, Charlie, which led me down a rabbit hole of Reddit threads of people being like, honey, there's a long history of them being ex-Russian pats. They anytime that there's they're anti-LGBTQ, because anytime someone is leaving comments on perfume reviews that are kind of hateful, they turn a blind eye. There's no moderation of them. Anytime there's Trump in the news and the media, they will boost the reviews for Trump's fragrance. So it's getting more traction and views.
I didn't know that Trump had a fragrance, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah. This is all alleged. I mean, like I said, don't come for me. This is all read on Reddit. I just there are other options. Parfumo, I believe, is one of them. I think just go with websites that align with your brand or who you are as a person, your ethics and morals. I think that's kind of...
And that goes across multiple platforms, because I know Amazon is also a thing, even though I am trying to get my brand on Amazon. But I will say, there's bookshop.org if you really want books. There's so many other platforms that you can explore. The internet is big. Just because it's popular doesn't necessarily mean it's the only thing out there.
Yep. So today, before we get into part 2 of the incredible story, I want to take a second to talk about another ingredient. We're going to be exploring a flower that is the very essence of spring. It's a tiny bell that rings in the new season with one of the most coveted scents in the world, Lily of the Valley. For centuries, this delicate blossom has been a symbol of purity, luck, and divine tears. But in the world of perfumery, it's held a paradoxical title, the silent flower. Its scent was so fragile, so ephemeral, that it couldn't be captured by traditional extraction methods. In this episode, we're going to uncover the sacred myths surrounding the plant, understand why it's forced perfumers to become master illusionists, and reveal a stunning modern alchemy that has finally given the silent flower a true natural voice. So let's get started. First, I want to talk about the mythology and the spirit to the Lily of the Valley. To understand the magic of Lily of the Valley, we have to start with its profound spiritual roots. It's not just a pretty flower, it's a botanical that's been touched by the divine. In Christian lore, it's known as Our Lady's Tears. The story goes that where the Virgin Mary's tears fell at the foot of the cross, these pure white bells sprang from the earth. It became a powerful emblem of humility, redemption, and the sacred feminine. But its divine connections go back even further. In Greek mythology, Lily of the Valley was sacred to Hera, queen of the gods. One version of its origin says it bloomed from her spilled breast milk. Another says it sprouted from her tears of sorrow. So I love that connection between the Greek myth and the Christian lore.
And also, I could see spilt breast milk looking like Lily of the Valley.
In another tale, Zeus himself has presented it to her as a gift symbolizing his devotion and marital loyalty. This sacred status isn't confined to ancient history, though. In France, Fête du Muguet on May 1st is a national day of giving these flowers for good luck, a tradition that started with King Charles IX in the 16th century. It's a symbol of spring's renewal, and for a day, the entire country is perfumed with its fresh, hopeful scent. And its power extends to protection across Slavic and Celtic traditions. It was planted around homes to ward off malevolent spirits and negative energies. It's a living talisman. Its pure white bells seen as a barrier against darkness. So, question for you. Lily of the Valley is tied to purity, protection, and good fortune. Have you ever encountered it in a cultural or family tradition, or does it feel like a scent from a fairy tale to you?
What I will say, and this is going to make me look like quite the nerd, but Lily of the Valley is what you get when you have a 5-star island in Animal Crossing. So when you you get a Lily of the Valley on your island, I'm obsessed. In Animal Crossing, particularly Animal Crossing New Horizons, got my ass through the pandemic. So
Yeah.
Animal Crossings have the entire series is like a real big place in my heart. And when I was a therapist for teens, my entire office was decorated in Animal Crossing everything.
You know what? I would call that a cultural relation to Lily of the Valley. For me, I've always connected Lily of the Valley to like fairies and fairy tales because it's an ephemeral flower. Like any of the ephemeral flowers, they're here for a very short period and then they're gone. It's like they never were here to begin with. It's so cool.
Unless you get them on your 5-star island, in which case, then they're there year round.
Then you have them. Next, I want to talk about the perfumer's paradox. We call it the silent flower, which is so interesting. So there's a great paradox that defined this flower for perfumers for over a century. Despite its powerful cultural presence and its unmistakable scent in the garden, Lily of the Valley is what the industry calls a silent flower. But what does that mean? Simply put, it's virtually impossible to extract a usable natural essence from it through traditional methods like steam distillation or solvent extraction. The delicate, volatile compounds that create its fresh, green, dewy fragrance are destroyed by the heat in the process. They simply just vanish, leaving nothing behind. So for decades, if you smelled a perfume with a stunning Lily of the Valley note, from things like the legendary Diorismo to modern classics, you were smelling a masterpiece of illusion, much like last week.
Which also plays into everything I'm going to cover, too.
Perfumers became olfactory wizards using synthetics like hydroxycitronellol and lyrol and blending other floral notes to recreate the ghost of this flower. We've been wearing a beautiful artistic specter all along. But modern alchemy is giving a voice to the silent flower. Recently, something miraculous has happened, and I say recent within like the last few years. Thanks to a beautiful fusion of technology and sustainability, the company Firmenich, a giant in the fragrance world, have achieved what was once thought to be impossible. They've created the first commercial scale, 100% natural Lily of the Valley extract, and it's called Muguet for Good. So how do they break the silence of this flower? It's a two-part spell. First, they partnered with a French vertical farming startup called Jungle. And instead of relying on fleeting seasonal harvests from the wild, they now grow these delicate flowers in a controlled indoor vertical farm. This provides consistent pesticide-free supply all year round, using less land and water. It's sustainable, ethical, and so smart. Second, and this is the real alchemy, they developed a revolutionary extraction technology called For Good. They haven't really released like their proprietary information. But basically, this process doesn't use heat or harsh solvents. Instead, it uses electromagnetic vibrations to pull the fragrant molecules out of the plant's inherent water, which is so cool.
That is
So it's a
super cool.
solvent-free, low-energy process that preserves the most delicate and authentic parts of the scent that would have been lost forever.
Because I'm into biotech, I could see how that's possible. On cell membranes, there's fats and proteins. With plants, it's a little different because they also have a cell wall. But those proteins are slightly negatively charged. So if you do put any kind of electrical current by a cell, you can temporarily open up the proteins in a cell membrane and get information in and out of a cell. So that might be part of how they are extracting. I just know electroporation from biotech stuff that I did when I was younger, but I could see taking that specifically for molecules, especially if they are positively or negatively charged, and being able to grab them out of both the cell and the plant itself.
That's so cool.
I don't know if that's the proprietary system.
Who knows? Who knows? They're a huge, huge giant in the fragrance industry, and they're not sharing their secrets anytime soon. I just want to touch on this briefly. A note of caution before we get too carried away with the romance of Lily of the Valley. Like many and most enchanting plants, Lily of the Valley is highly toxic. Every part of it contains cardiac glycosides. It's a powerful medicine, but also a powerful toxin. So yeah, don't fuck around with it. Don't play around with Lily of the Valley.
It's so interesting because it's a protection flower and it's so associated with protection. So maybe you're just poisoning everything that comes nearby.
It's that duality that nature is never just one thing. It's healing and harm. So closing thoughts. For Lily of the Valley, it takes us on a journey from the tears of the goddesses to cutting edge sustainable technology. It's a flower that embodies purity and poison, that was silent for a century, and as a testament to how human ingenuity can finally learn to listen to nature's most delicate whispers. It shows us that perfumery is never static. It's a living art where ancient symbols and futuristic science can merge to create something entirely new, yet deeply, primally familiar. Now, with the chime of these tiny white bells lingering in the air, I'm going to pass it over to you.
So, the fragrance for this week, since we're doing part 2, is Bath & Body Works Cucumber Melon. Which, did you think that Cucumber Melon had Lily of the Valley in it?
No.
As a note, in description, yes, Lily of the Valley is listed as one of the notes for Cucumber Melon. So, we did leave everyone on a cliffhanger last week, so I apologize kind of a little bit for that. So I do want to start with the Epstein of it all. In 80s, Les, as we discussed in last week's episode, was a newly minted billionaire, and he was trying to navigate the Gordon Geckos of New York City. He is a guy who grew up in Columbus, doesn't really have the social connections, doesn't know what he's doing, also has $1 billion and doesn't know what to do with this money. So he meets up with Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein already had a less than ideal background. Jeffrey Epstein left Bear Stearns in 1981 for unknown reasons. It's very sketchy and very difficult to figure out exactly why he was fired. But he was fired. We know that much. In the late 1980s, so when he was working with Les Wexner, he was working with someone who would eventually be convicted of running a Ponzi scheme.
Ooh.
Under oath, that person said that it was Jeffrey's idea, and that he was just kind of along for the ride. You're shaking your head, you're just like, I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised.
In 1987, this is when they first start getting involved in fragrance. Has hired a fashion director, not a fashion designer, just a fashion director, to develop a line of home products for Victoria's Secret. One of the tasks that she was given was she was physically given a $400 bottle of perfume that Les had purchased in France, and basically said, go to Asia and make it. So the Asian manufacturers were able to manufacture the knockoff for $8, which Victoria's Secret then sold for $40. That's an 80% profit margin.
Oh my God.
So one of the things, B, you asked me at the end of the episode that we recorded last week, which I'm pretty sure I cut out, but you were like, when are we going to talk about the fragrance or anything associated with who designed it?
Yeah.
And that's where we get into kind of this. So they took a bottle, sent it to Asia, said, make it. They made it, and they were making it for $8.
So there is no technical nose behind the scent. It's a company that
recreated something that was already out there. Because they're Victoria's Secret, they can also order 100,000 bottles at one time, which does give them the ability to knock down the price of manufacturing even further. So it started at $8, and because of just sheer volume, they were able to knock it down further. One of the first things a merchandiser remembers Les saying to her in the 1990s was, "Don't invent things, just be like the Japanese and copy the best." So we have a little racism along
Wow.
with our copying. In 1991, grants Jeffrey the power of attorney, which gives him the ability to act on Les's behalf in all financial decisions, not only with business deals, but also in how he should spend his money. It's unclear why Les does this. There seems to be some talk between people who were working for the Limited at the time that Les was under the impression that this is just what billionaires do, right? You hire a financial manager who manages your money, and then you just go back to doing whatever made you that $1 billion in the first place.
Mm.
That could be something that Jeffrey Epstein just kind of told him in order to get access to his money, but we do know that power of attorney was given to Jeffrey Epstein by Les Wexner in 1991, allowing Jeffrey access to all of the billions. In
Holy
January 1993, Les does get married to a girl named Abigail Koppel. It's at their big-ass house in New Albany, Ohio, the one that was just made at the end of the last episode. Only around 30 people were present. According to other accounts from people who worked at the company, this is kind of the death knell for the relationship between Les and his mother, Bella. Bella disapproves of the marriage. It's unclear why, because Abigail is a Jewish lawyer, like everything that a mom could want for their kid,
Right.
and gave up her career at a prestigious New York law firm in order to move to New Albany with Les. Part of this may be because Abigail is 24 years younger than Les is.
Could be it.
Could be it. Could also just be that Bella doesn't like anybody with her son. But regardless, immediately after the wedding, Bella moves to New York City, and then communication with the pair is limited thereafter. In spring of 1993, the catalog division of Victoria's Secret keeps getting calls from men who want women in their lives to model. This is not uncommon. Harvey Weinstein did it with some of the actresses that he worked with, but when it came to their attention that Jeffrey Epstein was portraying himself as a recruiter of Victoria's Secret models, the head of the catalog department did reach out to Les, who said he would take care of it, and there's multiple accounts of this, but in 2019, Les denied having any knowledge that Epstein used his connection to Victoria's Secret or Les to snare women.
Well, I don't believe that for a fucking second.
Yeah. Especially when there's like multiple people who have it on record of like, yeah, we called up Les who said he would take care of it. And then all of a sudden in 2019, Les is like, had no idea.
Right.
He might not have remembered, but like multiple people told him that Jeffrey Epstein was doing this.
Homeboy, you know what the fuck is going on. You've been to his fucking island.
We know. In August of 1993, after filing, this part gets a little sad. After filing for bankruptcy from another company. So basically, there was a company that went bankrupt, and then the person who owned the company had to go bankrupt, as well as divorce from Gay, who we loved from the last episode. Roy Raymond, the original founder of Victoria's Secret, climbed over a guardrail for the Golden Gate Bridge and jumped. That same year, Victoria's Secret would surpass $1 billion in annual revenue. In the obituaries, the press portrayed Roy as a tortured entrepreneur who sold his company before it achieved success. We know from the last episode that that's not the case. Victoria's Secret under Roy Raymond and Victoria's Secret under Les Wexner are two completely different companies. They just had the same
100%.
name.
Right.
But this narrative continues to follow the story of Roy, including it being something used in the movie The Social Network. Justin Timberlake's character, and he's portraying Sean Parker, the creator of Napster, tells Jesse Eisenberg, who is playing Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, not to tell his company too soon because the water at the bottom of the Golden Gate Bridge is really cold.
Wow, that's crazy.
Roy Raymond has become this like cautionary tale of like, don't sell your company too early,
Right?
but not the case. No, just so we are abundantly clear, that's not the case in this regard.
Right.
Like, Les Wexner is the reason it is the Victoria's Secret we all know. It was
Exactly.
not Roy Raymond. Roy Raymond just came up with the name and like the general concept.
And honestly, if I'm being honest, like his version sounds a lot cooler.
His version does seem a lot cooler.
Like a cabaret boudoir, like yes. Yes.
With like high-end, classy lingerie sourced from like France and stuff.
And antique
Absolutely.
furniture, I'm like, this sounds like cool as hell.
And fun. And definitely
fun.
better than Victoria's Secret angels with big-ass fake wings. In 1993, at the encouragement of New York real estate tycoon Donald Trump and Frederick Vanderwall, who is a Victoria's Secret model, they used Mar-a-Lago for a fashion shoot. However, Vanderwall specifies in her contract that Donald is not allowed to watch the shoot.
Why? Because he's a fucking creep. Big
Mhm.
creep energy. Wow.
And they're all in lingerie, so they want to be comfortable. Yep, not allowed.
Good.
Could you imagine not being allowed in your own house?
No.
I mean, I get why she asked for Donald not to be there, but at the same time, I'm like, it's still his house. Why would you agree to this? In 1995, Victoria's Secret hosts its first fashion show. Unlike all of the other fashion shows that happen, and the modern Victoria's Secret fashion show, which are live streamed, broadcast, and watched by millions, this first one was less about the people actually wearing the lingerie. 2 months after the show, Les was working to spin off Victoria's Secret and Bath & Body Works into an independent company from the rest of the Limited's holdings. Approximately 16% of the company was going to be traded as stock, and the show was designed to primarily showcase to Wall Street investors what the brand was about. The audience was about 500 people, almost entirely men, principally stockbrokers. There's also the intended exposure of something like a lingerie fashion show for members of the press who ate that shit up.
Of course they
including reports of men in the front row hooting at the models when they were walking down the runway. And these are not lowball models. Like, we have Tyra Banks is one of the models who was modeling in this fashion show, and they're hooting at her as she is walking down the runway. We are red. We are speechless.
Why are men?
Just why are men?
Why are men?
Why are men? When Intimate Brands, the new name for the spinoff, went public 2 months later, it generated $680 million, or around $17 per share. And spinning off companies that are owned by the Limited and all of the Limited's holdings continues to happen. In 1988, Les buys a brand called Abercrombie & Fitch. He puts Mike Jeffries, a merchant, in charge of it in 1992. Mike is the one who takes the brand to the dark, heavy music fragrance store that it was known for in the 2000s. And eventually, this one was also spun out to its own company in 1997. With both Abercrombie and Intimate Brand spin-offs, Epstein is at the forefront of these business decisions. So everything is like encouraged by, managed by, invented by Jeffrey Epstein.
Wow.
Sometime in the late 1990s, the most expensive single-person residence in New York City that Les bought in the 90s and then spent millions of dollars renovating and filling with fine art was transferred to Jeffrey for an undisclosed sum. Some reports say that it was purchased for $20 million. Others suggest that Les just signed it over. It is important to know, at this point in time, Jeffrey Epstein had power of attorney and could theoretically just sign over the deed to himself. In 1998, after 3 decades of Les using only patterning in all areas of his business, he finally hires a fashion designer to design only Victoria's Secret bras.
After 30 years.
30 years in fashion retail.
And you're just now hiring a fashion designer. That is insane.
And it goes back to the same idea with the fragrances, right? Everything is taken from somewhere else. And I don't want to gloss over this at all. I do think this is something important when we discuss this company. in this episode. Everything that they had created up to this point was just a copy of something else that had already existed in the world. Everything. Their bras, their clothing, their fragrances, everything was just a copy. Now,
Wow.
we know in the 90s, Cucumber Melon had a chokehold on people. So that was somewhere else in the world. Oh, yeah. We all have PTSD from Cucumber Melon. Anybody who is a millennial or older. So that was just sourced from somewhere. They did spend all of this money on merchandisers and sent them out into the world to then bring stuff back, just like Les Wexner did with this $400 bottle of perfume. And then they would ship it off to Asia and say, all right, now make it cheaper, more cost effective, and give it to us in a matter of weeks. And that's how they ran everything under limited brands. That's so crazy, because at this point in time, because this is 1998, you're looking at 8 years without a single perfumer on staff. Or if they did have a perfumer, it was someone who was just like recreating something else, not like someone who was actually being creative and participating in the artistry of fragrance. Yeah, none of that. Patterning becomes so severe that it earns limited brands a poor reputation, prompting some brands to refuse to work with the brand. For instance, Warnaco was manufacturing Victoria's Secret Miracle Bra. The CEO suspected that the company was just taking ideas for bras from the company that they would either present to the company to get more of their business or the actual physical bras themselves, and then shipping them overseas to figure out a way to manufacture them. Warnaco cut ties with the brand, but then they ended up needing to file for bankruptcy protection a year later. So you're doing that at your own risk as well.
Right. It's such a shame.
It is such a shame because there's no creativity. And I think that that's something that, particularly when, I don't know the last time you walked into a Bath & Body Works, but my husband is not particularly into fragrance. He hasn't really worn it since I started my company. But being around my fragrances enough and like kind of seeing what this industry is about, he'll walk into Bath & Body Works and just be like, what the fuck is this? Like, it doesn't take much for a person who knows about kind of like what we do to see some of these more commercial fragrances and just be like, what are we doing?
Yep. Well, I tell people this all the time when you look at things like Baccarat Rouge, and I'm like, you're paying for the name. You're paying for Baccarat and you're paying for Francis Kirkchin.
Yep.
You're not paying for the ingredients. I can tell you that because they're cheap.
Yes. And knowing between last week's episode and this week's episode that both Peony and Lily of the Valley, at least until recently for Lily of the Valley, had to be synthetic accords, it makes sense that it's going to be in all of these limited fragrances.
Mm-hmm. And if we're talking about Cucumber Melon, you're talking about like, okay, what? So to create the Lily of the Valley, it's probably something cheap like Hedione. For the melon, you're talking about melanol, also a cheap ingredient. And cucumber, you could just use cucumber fragrance oil, cheap. There you go.
Bam. So even if it just has those 3 ingredients, that's absolutely what they're looking for because they can produce it for, let's go with $3 a bottle if it's in plastic, and then sell it to you for $15. In 1999, they hire Adriana Lima, one of the first women to model a thong without a sheer skirt or anything to cover her backside. She was 15 at the time. In Victoria's Secret's defense, not that I want to defend them whatsoever, it was Lima's agent who lied and said that she was 16 in order to get the gig. But that does not make anything that much better. That's a matter of months.
Like, that makes it better.
Lima joined the ranks of other well-known supermodels like Heidi Klum and Giselle Bundchen and would go on to be their longest-serving Victoria's Secret angel. So, good for her. That is one thing that I did kind of respect about Victoria's Secret is that a lot of times these models were working well into their mid to late 30s as Victoria's Secret angels. That being said, the contracts were not great. There was a lot of exclusivity rights and a lot of like public appearances, often when they opened up a new Victoria's Secret store, which they were doing all of the time, or a new brand, because we'll get into that. There you go. You have Giselle Bundchen, Heidi Klum, or Adriana Lima. They're saying hi, meeting customers. For the 1999 fashion show, they hire a tech startup with a small, unknown CEO named Mark Cuban. He owned broadcast.com to live stream the Victoria's Secret fashion show. Of course, at the time, it's still 1999, so most households are working with dial-up, and bandwidth just did not exist to support live streaming, let alone live streaming video.
Yeah.
Frankly, even now, like Netflix struggles with bigger live streams, and we're 25 years later.
Yeah.
It inevitably fails, which I don't know how they thought it was going to work in the first place, but of course it failed. People who were tuning in to watch this live stream are pissed. But Ed Razek, the head of marketing for L Brands, and some would argue a bestie of Les, spins this failure as a success. The narrative goes from, this was a huge failure, why did we do this, to it was such a popular thing to watch, it crashed the internet.
That's one way to say it.
That is one way to say it. 2 months after the Victoria's Secret live stream, Mark Cuban sells broadcast.com to Yahoo for $5.7 stock.
Oh my God.
Yep. So a failure 2 months later results in a huge ass payout. After the quote unquote success of the first fashion show being live streamed, everyone at L Brands wants to up the ante. That's when Ed Razek gets a call from an unlikely source, Harvey Weinstein. We're back with Harvey Weinstein. Harvey, along with his brother Bob, founded Miramax, which produced independent films like Good Will Hunting and Pulp Fiction. Because of this, they had huge influence in a small film festival in the south of France, the Cannes Film Festival.
Oh.
One of the events that Weinstein had elevated was Elizabeth Taylor's AIDS charity fundraiser. So we're back to episode 2. We're
Full
back
circle.
to Elizabeth Taylor again.
Full circle.
Like, we've got Frances Kirkgin, we've got Elizabeth Taylor. We're just bringing in all of the hits from last season.
The references.
Weinstein thought could draw more money to both the event and the charity if the fashion show was to take place there. Because this was a much bigger event than their previous fashion shows, they needed to hire more models than just their angels, some of who were as young as 14.
Wow.
Not a good look, guys.
Well, we see the men behind it.
They also needed to cordon off the models from many of the attendees, including Harvey Weinstein. But our good buddy Ed, free reign to walk all around backstage, which he would do throughout his career, walk behind backstage at Victoria's Secret fashion shows. He was also known for giving like the pep talk before the show started to all the models in the dressing room. By 2001, Victoria's Secret had $3.3 billion in annual sales and was growing at a rate of 20% per year. In 2002, Victoria's Secret and Bath & Body Works were acquired by Limited Brands, now known as L Brands at that point. And Les Wexner is in his late 60s, so he's starting to think of like possibly retiring and what retirement would look like. I also want to say that they spun off Victoria's Secret and Bath & Body Works, then made a fuck ton of money, then bought it back 6 years later. And all of these acquisitions, mergers, spin-offs, all of them had Jeffrey Epstein behind them.
Wow.
By 2004, Victoria's Secret was up to $4 billion in annual sales, which was more than all of Les's other companies combined.
That's wild. That's so much fucking money. Holy shit.
Yeah, and that's a year. $4 billion a year. Not valuation of the company, not any of that. Nope. Just in sales, total revenue for the year. Ed also gets involved in the love lives of his angels. One of the couples he connects is Gisele Bündchen and Tom Brady. Gisele was the second Victoria's Secret model that Brady would date. Razek is on record stating that having his angels date celebrities was a situation where, quote unquote, everyone wins.
It's publicity. It's wow.
After the success of Abercrombie, which in 1997 had $500 million in sales, Les tries to appeal to our favorite demographic, millennials.
God.
The logic behind appealing to millennials is that they would attract customers when they're in the limited 2 range, which was designed for preteens, and then convert them over to Victoria's Secret when they're just a little bit older. However, he wants girls to visit the Victoria's Secret store as early as they start wearing bras. So he launches Pink. Do you remember Pink?
I remember Pink. Yep.
Pink had a fucking chokehold.
On every fucking mall. Every mall in Florida, there was like all this signage for Pink. Yeah.
What we do know about Pink is that besides the fact that it sells items like sweatpants and zip-up hoodies and pillows and had its own line of fragrances, Les doesn't seem to gravitate towards it. Like, he doesn't know what to do with the brand. My personal speculation, right, and this is alleged, just what I think, Pink has a lot more clothing at base value than previously on his customers. So it went from lingerie to leisure wear. And that might be why he doesn't know what to do with that.
Didn't they eventually get into like back to school stuff?
The whole premise behind Pink was this like collegiate vibe. Like, that's what they wanted to integrate into their brand. It was just like, oh, you just throw these sweatpants on and then you look put together to go to your 8 a.m. class. Even though most of the people who were wearing it were middle and high schoolers.
Right.
The vibes of the brand and what they were going for was like a collegiate aesthetic.
Okay.
What does happen is that Pink almost immediately becomes a cash cow for Victoria's Secret. And in 2008, it's on the verge of being its own billion-dollar brand, separate from Victoria's Secret.
Yeah.
One of the things that the merchandisers find interesting is that even when a person can afford a $200 pair of juicy sweatpants, they usually end up buying the Pink version instead, which is around $50. Juicy does at one point sue Victoria's Secret for stealing their brand, and there is a settlement for an undisclosed sum, which was probably just Victoria's Secret saying, fuck off. Here, we'll give you money and just shut up. Although, alleged. We don't know.
Alleged. Who knows?
Alleged. In December of 2007, removed Jeffrey's power of attorney. Finally, the guy's free.
Wow.
The motives are unclear, but in 2007, Jeffrey is convicted of 1 count of prostitution. Originally, it was multiple counts of prostitution, I believe soliciting a minor, but don't quote me on that. And they dropped it down to 1 count of prostitution. It's also reported that Les found out that Jeffrey had taken, quote, vast sums of money, which mattered a lot to Les because at this point, he has multiple children. He has 4 children. So that's a lot of kind of his own motivation is if you have generational wealth, you would like to pass it on to the next generation. So it seems that his family was the primary reason for removing Jeffrey as power of attorney. Jeffrey Epstein's attorney, Alan Dershowitz, reported that he asked Jeffrey at the time if he thought Les would sue him. Like, did Les remove power of attorney for sketchy reasons?
Right.
Jeffrey stated, I have absolutely no fear of that, and that Alan Dershowitz assumed the reason was something sexual.
Alan Dershowitz is his own can of worms. That man is a Zionist.
Absolutely.
No, thank you.
So not great, but, I mean, everything in this is so sketchy.
It's just riddled with terrible men.
Filled to the brim with terrible men. In 2015, the company surpasses $8 billion in sales. Despite having a smaller footprint in its retail locations and not being present in all locations, Pink's revenue is almost equal to Victoria's Secret sales. But it's still crazy. Like the black sheep of the L Brands family, which I find so crazy. Like, what, you don't like college kids wearing sweatpants? Like, I don't understand what the beef is. However, all good things must come to an end. Around this time, Victoria's Secret starts facing backlash, not only for its advertising, but also for its exclusivity, particularly size exclusivity, on which Les founded his brand. Because remember, the limited is all about we can only carry so many things. So Victoria's Secret doesn't carry a ton of cup sizes, doesn't cover a ton of band sizes, doesn't cover a ton of sizes, period, because we're looking to get things out to market fast. We don't have time to size things. That's why I was excluded growing up from anything Victoria's Secret outside of Love Spell, because this shit was nowhere near me. I wore a triple D cup when I was 12. I'm not fucking fitting in anything in Victoria's Secret
Right.
or Pink for that matter. So this exclusivity starting in 2015 really starts playing into the brand. There's also way more competitors. American Eagle, who we don't love right now, but we'll respect them in this moment, launches Aerie, which has more size inclusive models.
Mm-hmm.
Rihanna has Fenty, and then
Mm-hmm.
soon Skims with Kim Kardashian will follow. This is where things start to get interesting. We have predominantly been discussing Victoria's Secret and a little bit about Pink. So what happens when Victoria's Secret crumbles? Now we're leaning real hard on Bath and Body Works, right? This other side of the same freaking coin.
Right.
They create a backstory just like they did with this fictional Victoria, the English, lovely businesswoman with her secret of designer and fancy lingerie. Now they have Kate, who's a Midwest country girl. So when you walk into Bath and Body Works, you're walking into her country cottage. Hence
That's
all
why
the
it looks
gingham.
like that. Yeah.
Yep, that's why it looks like that. They have like this whole backstory of Kate with her baskets and her gingham, and she's just a Midwest country girl.
It's so bad. It's so bad. There hasn't been one point in life where I liked Bath and Body Works. It's not for me.
I think for me, I just grew up so poor that like that was the option. I remember growing up, my mom wore Estee Lauder Pleasures.
Yep, my mom's the same.
When you're growing up and like you're poor as shit, and Amber Romance covers up the fact that you're smoking in your backyard and you don't want your parents to know.
Yes!
That 100% happens.
I see it.
I started smoking like at 18 and I didn't want to come into the house smelling like cigarette smoke, so romance. In 2010, Bath and Body Works was slightly more than half of Victoria's Secret sales, but between 2015 and 2018, its revenue went from $1 billion to $4.6 billion.
Woo! Hot damn.
They're also able to make things more efficient, which calls into question what they're using for ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
The operating income rate went from 18% of their revenue to 6.3% of their revenue.
Wow. Yeah.
Most importantly, Bath and Body Works is growing like crazy at a time when Victoria's Secret is on decline. In 2019, they canceled the Victoria's Secret fashion show and start exploring management changes. A bunch of people started getting severance packages to leave the company, and a potential sale of the company to Sycamore, a private equity firm. In February of 2020, they announced a deal that values Victoria's Secret, including the Pink brand, at $1.1 billion, which is a significant drop from the billions of in revenue that they were making less than a decade earlier.
Right.
So we're going from what, $8 billion in 2015, and then by February of 2020, the company is valued at $1.1 billion. When the deal goes through, Willis will retire. That's all part of the announcements. He's also, at this point in time, the longest serving CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
Wow.
Which, I mean, good for him on that one.
He's how old at this point?
This point, 2020, I think he's nearing 80.
Holy shit.
Yeah, because right now he's in his 80s.
Jesus.
Then, as we know from personal history, nothing monumental in the world happens after February 2020.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. There's just a black hole for like a few years, and then
we all just learned some
again.
TikTok dances, and
Yes.
and then 2022 happened, right?
We lived in Animal Crossing.
We lived on our island in Animal Crossing, exactly.
Yes.
When the pandemic occurred, Sycamore argues in court that L Brands intentionally bungled the pandemic response to render Victoria's Secret unsalvageable. So they back out of the deal. That's how hard they bungled the pandemic.
Wait, so what happens after that? Where are we now?
In May of 2020, Les leaves as CEO. And since then, the company has faced significant backlash outside of just the Jeffrey Epstein of it all and Les funding Jeffrey Epstein and Jeffrey Epstein saying that he was connected to Victoria's Secret in order to lure women into all of his shenanigans. Ed Razek, the head of marketing, the one who was walking around backstage before Victoria's Secret fashion shows, came under fire for his treatment of models, including alleged instances of him taking models on dates. When they wouldn't reciprocate any of his advances, he mysteriously stopped having work for them. Ed denies this. And multiple...
Wow.
What?
Imagine
You're like,
that. A man being an awful, shitty human being. Wow, how crazy.
and trying to use his position of power in order to get sex. I think
Right.
that's the technical term, right? Get sex.
Yeah.
Multiple documentaries start coming out early as 2020, but the most damning of them comes out in 2022. They expose not only the working conditions for the models, but also the Asian manufacturers, as well as the connection between Jeffrey and Les Wexner.
Get up! Yes!
They have also gone through multiple CEOs at this point. The person who replaced Les in May did not make it through the holiday season. So that's where we're leaving off Victoria's Secret and L Brands. Bath & Body Works is still kicking it. I will say that much.
Wow.
And they are still leaning heavily on Bath & Body Works to kind of make up for just the sheer bullshit
Everything
that is
else.
going on with Victoria's Secret, which used to be their primary cash cow.
That was a crazy journey.
What
God
surprised
damn.
you the most of everything that we went over?
I think like how interconnected all of these people are and were. Like, I had no clue Jeffrey Epstein was like a huge part of this story.
And Harvey Weinstein.
And Harvey Weinstein. And like, yeah, all these people. Oh my God. The rabbit hole goes deep, is what I'm saying. What is the timeline we're on? I hate it. I hate it here.
It is the worst timeline. Sillage and Sorcery was produced by B. Sampson and Melissa Sifjardóttir. It was written by B. Sampson and Melissa Sifjardóttir. Research conducted by Melissa Sifjardóttir and B. Sampson. Our logo was designed by B. Sampson. It is edited. You know what? I had my first final for my MBA due this week, so you will get this episode and you like it. You can find links to our brands in the show notes below, as well as other places to find us, merch, and all of that good stuff on our website at www.sillageandsorcery.com. Thank you so much for listening. I don't know if I say that enough, but thank you guys so much for listening. We love you. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Well, I think there's this thing about like duality with like it's pure beauty. Pure beauty.
That's what I was called in
and
high school.
Pure booty. Listening to Pure Moods. So it's like one part pure booty, one part. I said it again. Pure booty. One part booty girl.